Hafaday and good evening, and welcome to PNC's News First. We're live from the Broadcast Center at Conta. I'm Janella Carrera.
And I'm Clinton Rogel. Thanks for tuning in. Topping your news first tonight. Senators have been in session on a bill to create a 2% sales tax for several days now. Yesterday they were in session until 9 p.m. There's been a lot of discussion and a lot of amendments added to the bill. So where does the bill stand right now, and will they vote soon? Will it pass? Although it appears that they've made some headway with the measure, it also appears that things are still very much up in the air.
Majority Leader Senator Tom Atta says it looked like senators were getting close to not only voting on the proposed 2% sales tax, but even passing it.
When we recessed last night, we had made considerable headway, and had we voted last night, I think the bill would have passed. Then, of course, this morning, one of the colleagues introduced an amendment which changes the bill substantially.
Senator Mike Nicholas introduced an amendment that would exempt Guam residents from the sales tax and increase the proposed sales tax from the 2% in the original version of the bill to 6% for non-residents only.
I think those are significant changes, and the members have asked to have more time to discuss this because I believe that these are substantive changes could be a game changer.
In fact, one of the changes means less revenues than the original bill would have brought in. Revenue Tax Director John Camacho has said a 2% across-the-board sales tax would have generated roughly $130 million annually. If residents are excluded from the sales tax completely and only non-residents are taxed, it's estimated that only $25 million would be generated annually.
If the amendment fails, it's going to be, the bill would be back to what it was last night, and the last head count that was taken, it appeared that there might be the 8 votes to pass the bill, at least as we had it yesterday.
The amendment did fail. However, Minority Leader Senator Jim Espaldon says the original bill has already been altered significantly.
Over the past several days, a lot of amendments have been thrown in to the original bill, and I'm curious to see what that looks like, because I expressed it last night at the session that sometimes we're throwing in amendments so fast that we don't really have the time to understand its effect on the bill overall, or its effect on existing law, or even its effect in terms of unintended consequences that we haven't even thought of, because everything's moving so fast. In the end, bottom line, I think we all realize something needs to be done. Not only a tax increase or the creation of a whole new tax, but I believe that in working together with the executive branch has really got to embrace the idea that there is real concern down here at the legislature that not enough is being done to really trim costs right now immediately, or if they are trimming costs, they might be trimming in the wrong places. I mean, if we're talking the fire department and police department, that might be the wrong place to be the initial cut. I think there are a lot of other services that probably can be looked at to be scaled down aside from public safety. One of the things we don't want to do is not do anything.
And as of news time, senators were discussing an amendment by Senator Tommy Morrison that would implement the sales tax on October 1st and instead raise the business privilege tax by 1% from April 1st until September 30th. The idea is to allow Revenue Tax to adopt rules and regulations for the implementation of the sales tax. That amendment was just passed shortly with 8 votes right during this newscast.
In other news, one of the men accused in the deadly carjacking of Gilbert Alvarez is asking the court for more time to build his defense before trial. Malo Manguf Sally is one of the suspects charged in the murder of Gilbert Alvarez, who was beaten to death after Sally and co-defendant A. Las Cimarron gave him a ride. Today in court, Sally's attorney, Jay Ariola, asked the court for additional time to secure forensic pathologist Dr. Joseph Cohen to testify as an expert witness. Ariola stated that Alvarez's manner of death is at issue, and he's seeking Cohen's testimony, which will rebut the testimony of Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Aurelio Espinola. The court, in response, has granted a 60-day extension and has set further proceedings and a criminal trial setting for May 15th.
The court needs more time to review the bail proposition presented by the shooting instructor charged in the Harmon shooting, which left 2 men dead. Joseph Sagdal stands accused in the double homicide of Broky Tomaso and A.V. Maureciong, which allegedly stemmed from an altercation between he and one of the victims. Sagdal was arrested in December 2017. He's being held on $500,000 cash bail. Last month, Sagdal asked the court to consider accepting 2 properties in lieu of cash in order to post bail. However, Superior Court Judge Maria Senzon stated that she believes, quote, there is not enough sufficient information in order to proceed. The court will need to confirm the actual value of the properties in order to determine if the property's combined value meets the bail requirements.
2 separate cases before the Superior Court may go in opposite directions, one to trial and the other taken off the trial docket. The first case is against Jeremiah Isazaki, who was accused back in 2012 of plotting to kill a police officer. However, in court today, the government notified the court that they may move to dismiss the case without prejudice if they're unable to meet the burden of proof by the trial date. With this in mind, Isazaki asserted his right to a speedy trial, which means that the court has 45 to 60 days to begin trial. The issue before the court, however, is when the speedy trial clock began and whether or not the time frame has been passed. Once that's determined, the court will set the matter for trial. Meanwhile, former GPD Colonel Mark Charfris will proceed to trial as no hope for resolution is anticipated. He's accused of official misconduct and obstructing governmental functions when he was seen on body cam footage berating fellow officers on Christmas Eve of 2016. In preparation for trial, Judge Maria Senzon has ordered that both parties submit a report relative to the substantive matters that the expert witnesses will be testifying to in an effort to ensure that the expert witnesses do not make inferences about Charfris's culpability. Trial dates in both cases have not yet been set.
A man who was convicted of raping an 11-year-old boy in Okinawa in 2009 and is incarcerated in federal prison will be released next month. However, because he has no ties to Guam, the federal government will arrange for him to have free housing while he transitions out of Guam. Court papers say 64-year-old Bruce Carey Wood was working as a civilian employee under the U.S. military at a base in Okinawa when he raped a boy. He took a plea deal and was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment in Guam, but upon his release next month, Wood will likely be homeless. So the U.S. Probation Office is agreeing to house Wood in temporary housing using funds from the Second Chance Act. Carey will use this time to apply for a U.S. passport and has indicated that he would like to return to his wife in Okinawa.
Meanwhile, an accused sexual predator may be off the hook as the charges against him are to be dismissed. Joaquin Cruz is facing charges of criminal sexual conduct for allegedly sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl known to him. Cruz is accused of fondling the victim once when she was 13 years old and again after she turned 14. He was charged in February of last year with 2 counts second-degree criminal sexual conduct as a first-degree felony and 3 counts second-degree criminal sexual conduct as a first-degree felony. However, in court today, the government notified Judge Maria Senzon that they intend to dismiss the charges against him without prejudice as the victim is no longer on island. Cruz's attorney has asked the court to expunge the arrest from his record. However, Judge Senzon said he would have to argue the grounds for expungement as the dismissal is without prejudice. Congresswoman Madeline Berdelio is not happy with the National Park Service's hiring practices at the Warren the Pacific National Historical Park, and she let a top Park Service official know it at a House Natural Resources hearing. PNC Washington correspondent Matt Kay reports.
Bordallo told Park Service Deputy Director Daniel Smith the 1978 law that created the War in the Pacific National Historic Park requires the service to hire and train Guam and NMI residents, reflecting their lower turnover, to develop and run the park. But Bordallo complained that's not what's happening.
I have heard numerous complaints from my constituents that the National Park Service does not attempt to recruit Guam residents for staffing vacancies at the War in the Pacific National Historic Park.
But the Park Service's Smith had little to offer.
I'm not personally aware of that situation, but I certainly will look into it. And with that kind of direction, and especially with the location of Guam, I don't know why we wouldn't consider residents of Guam for those positions. But sitting here today, I do not have a definitive answer on that. I will look into it. And again, with that congressional direction, we certainly will look to see what that situation is on Guam.
Fish and Wildlife Service Deputy Director Steve Girton was stumped by another Bordallo question, whether FWS regions spend refuge maintenance money based on the size of each region's full-time staff, a practice Bordallo complains would give short shrift to Guam's National Wildlife Refuge with its smaller staff but significant needs. Girton conceded the regions have some discretion in funding maintenance backlog work, but could not answer specifically about the Pacific region, and promised instead to provide House Natural Resources with FWS regional budgeting guidance. Matt Kay for PNC News on Capitol Hill.
The Guam Women's Chamber held their Guam Tax Plan and Economic Forum Friday morning at the Guam Hilton Hotel. There, attendees heard from David Addington, who works for the National Federation of Business in Washington, D.C. Chamber President Vanessa Williams says they've known since the end of last year that the Tax Cut and Jobs Act would have an impact on Guam. So when the opportunity to hear from Addington arose, they took it. Williams says Addington has been on the forefront of pushing and implementing the new tax bill, which affects Guam.
We said, this couldn't be better timing. We'd like to have a kind of a broad-based understanding of the impetus for the federal tax code or tax reform, and then understanding the mechanics of that and how it, understanding that the drive behind it for our motivations federally are different, and we, in all reality, don't consider the implications to Guam. Once we establish that as a baseline, then we can have an informed discussion on how is Guam going to move forward.
Williams says today's discussion was very productive. In addition to hearing from Mr. Addington, forum participants also heard a panel discussion from local tax, finance, and economic experts. Williams said it's fitting that the forum was held at this time as the legislature has been in the throes of hearing different tax bills.
We always want to talk about the economy, and we knew we needed to talk about taxes, and we knew there was going to be an impact to Guam. We just didn't think that the timing would line up, that we are thrust right in the middle of the conversation. So hopefully our voices were heard today, and that will be, considered by the public and by our elected officials as they move forward.
That tax forum panel featured Joe Arnett from Deloitte & Touche, Marie Benito of Revin Tax, Ed Brobesong from Ernst & Young, Public Auditor Doris Flores Brooks, Department of Labor Chief Economist Gary Hiles, and Legislative Finance and Tax Chairman Senator Joe San Agustin.
Well, GITA Administrator Jay Rojas is disputing allegations that money they received from the Guam Regional Medical City as a condition of their qualifying certificate was spent on things not in line with the QC's intention. On News Talk K57 with host Patty Arroyo, Rojas talked about some of the conditions of GRMC's QC. Depending on the type of program, a qualifying certificate exempts a company from paying taxes in the form of rebates or other abatements.
For GRMC in particular, their QC says it should be used towards economic development, tourism-related funds, cultural awareness funds, or cultural awareness projects, tourism-related projects, and the hospital and healthcare. So we can use it for anything. We were looking at there has been a donation that was made by GRMC to help promote the nursing school.
Rojas said in December of 2016, GRMC's Director of Corporate Affairs, Eric Plinsky, inquired about how their contributions can be spent, requesting that $100,000 each go toward UOG and GCC's healthcare education programs. Rojas responded, telling Plinsky to make a formal request, but he says that formal letter was never submitted. Plinsky called into News Talk K57 this morning to clear up the confusion, saying GRMC initially wanted the funds to help with healthcare education, but they began looking into CHIP, or Children's Health Insurance Program, which is Medicaid-based. Plinsky pointed out that there's still $117 million in unspent Affordable Care Act money that Guam can take advantage of through a local match.
One of the things we're also looking at is, should we work with GITA to contribute that to the Department of Administration, the central fund, where then they could get a 55% to a 90-some% if it's CHIP, Children Health Insurance Program. That might be a better place for the money to go for the government. So we did not submit the letter to request to go to OG or DCC because there may be a greater, believe it or not, great institutions, but for the government as a whole, there may be more positive impact for the healthcare community in Guam if these funds could maybe go to the central fund, where they could then get a 55 to 90-some% federal match. Okay, so that's why the letter never went in.
Rojas says QC money that ends up in GITA's coffers is spent on economic development to attract new investors, and he adds that some of the funds were used to bring in low-cost carriers from Korea to Guam, as well as add an additional Japan Airlines flight to Guam.
The University of Guam celebrated its 50th Charter Day today. Celebrating under the theme, Green is the New Gold, the OG campus featured a wide variety of events such as a pig-catching contest, egg-tossing games, and a Battle of the Bands. Today's events did not just focus on post-secondary students, but also included outreach for potential future UOG students. Kinder through high school students from Guam and the Marianas were also invited to compete in Chamorro language competitions in drawing, writing, and singing. This morning on K57, UOG President Dr. Robert Underwood spoke to Patty on the radio. He said today's UOG, quote, isn't your grandmother's University of Guam, saying many improvements have been made over the years and there are more to come.
I've charted a vision and we're working on it. We're doing the groundbreaking on Monday for the School of Engineering. So we're really pumped about a lot of things. But most of all, it's just, I tell people this is not your grandmother's University of Guam. It's a different institution. It's, the faculty is about a third local, a third from international sources, and a third from the U.S. mainland. So it's just a whole different sense to the institution. The programs are varied. They're more, we use the term localization. We're more global and we're more local at the same time.
Senators also presented Dr. Underwood with a resolution to mark his retirement as president of the University of Guam and also recognized him for his 29 years of service to the government of Guam and the university.
Well, we're just days away from the Stay Well Guam Diabetes Foundation Gala featuring actress and singer Vanessa Williams, who's certainly the draw to this event. But we also sat down with the organizers of this event who talk about some of the amazing work they're doing and the reason why everyone should be supporting this cause.
Vanessa Williams live in Guam. Come and support this Guam Diabetes Foundation signature event.
It's the first ever gala for the Stay Well Guam Diabetes Foundation, which began with a simple mission to raise awareness within the community on the devastating effects of diabetes in an effort to eradicate it. The foundation is relatively new and is just getting their footing, but they're coming out strong with their inaugural gala this Saturday. The foundation's executive director, Mike Brown, shares with us some alarming facts about diabetes.
World Health Organization has declared Micronesia, we're the largest island in the group, one of the worst places on the planet for diabetes. We have a very high percentage of our adult population that is actually diabetic. We have our children that are, we're not getting enough exercise, we're not eating right.
And the numbers for Guam are increasing year after year. For a disease that is curable and preventable depending on the type, Brown says it's clear there isn't enough awareness on Guam.
We as a community have to pull our strength now and fight this disease. For too long, for too long, it has been just wreaking havoc on everybody in our community and throughout the islands. And we just lost 3 really wonderful people from this island to this disease in Carl Gumatautal, Carl Butler, who actually is, I would say, the father of getting people aware of diabetes, and then John Salas, one of the most beautiful people you would ever know, 3 of the most beautiful people you would ever know.
This weekend's gala will raise funds to help in combating this disease. It will be a time for reflection, but will also be a time for some great fun with the main attraction, award-winning actress and singer Vanessa Williams, who called into News Talk K57's Mornings with Patty this morning.
Good morning, half a day. I learned that yesterday.
Look at you. Half a day. Well done.
I'm fortunate to have hit songs that have stood the test of time, that can still make people feel and cry and play at weddings and mean something. So, I'm blessed.
Meanwhile, Brown says there will be some great raffle prizes and multiple grand prizes that include 6 hotel stays, 3 round-trip tickets for 2 to Manila with 2-night stays to Resorts World, as well as 2 round-trip tickets to London, courtesy of Philippine Airlines. DFS Guam also donated a $2,000 shopping spree to the event. And the event will be held at the Dusit Thani Convention Center this Saturday, March 17. Doors open at 6 p.m. for open bar, and the event begins promptly at 7 p.m. Tickets are $300 each, and Brown says there are still a few left, so make sure to grab yours fast.
All right, that's it for News First from all of us here at PNC. Thanks for watching. Stay Malik.
And have a good night.